is Cecilia Stair there from her album. I should know that. Another Human is the record that is from. That was Make You Happy with Warren Byram and Robbie Cosenza on a harmonica solo. It's so nice to hear Robbie. I'd like to welcome Cecilia to the show, who we haven't had a chance to chat in quite some time. Hello there, my friend. Let's see. It's nice to see you.
You too.
Thanks for joining us. Sorry if I had to reach into your back catalog there a little bit, but I think you know how much I love that song.
I know. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. You have, as we mentioned before, Warren Byram doing a fabulous duet there with you, and as you mentioned to me in a side comment, Robbie Cosenza on harmonica, who is
Yeah,
so
and drums and percussion.
and just so many things, right? And I know that he was very beloved by you and so many in the Lexington music community.
Yeah, he was such a great friend, so encouraging. And, thinking back on that project, like he was just such a great cheerleader to me and just to everybody, like if someone wanted to make music, he was the biggest cheerleader. And I feel like he gave so much encouragement to so many people who are starting out and just needed that little nudge and that little like little bit of confidence. He was so good at that. And I think that was such a gift that he gave to so many people.
And that is a sentiment I've heard from a variety of people. So
Um,
it's great that he exists still in so much music.
yeah.
You have made quite a lot of strides. We met when you lived in Lexington. You're back now in your native Tennessee, right?
I am. I'm in Knoxville again.
It seems to suit you well.
But there's so much that I learned in Lexington. There's so many relationships that I gained, so many friendships, and nothing I'm doing in Knoxville could have happened without my time in Lexington.
Yeah, yeah. Now you grew up in Knoxville, is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Charleston, West Virginia, moved here when I was 8 with my family and lived here up until 2015, and then lived in Lexington for a while, went to grad school, came back to Knoxville. So I've made kind of a little triangle around Appalachia.
And you can the role that music plays in your life. I want to talk about that some because it can't be overstated. I would say you play a variety of instruments. You play cello, and you play. Don't you play some other instruments too, or am I making that up?
Yeah, I play cello is my primary instrument. When I do my original music, I usually play bass. I usually play electric
That's
bass.
right.
And then for my music therapy work, I use guitar primarily for that to accompany myself.
Yeah. So you're working in your field, which is like the highest praise that you can say. I feel like sometimes to people where careers are going, this is what you
Oh my
studied
God.
to do.
I feel so lucky that I get to do work that I love because I've also had to do a lot of jobs that were not my passion. And I think when you've had lots of those jobs too, man, when you get to a place where you're really doing what you want to be doing, you feel so grateful for it. Or that's how I feel.
Yeah. Now you have continued all these things in Knoxville, your music that you play, as well as being involved. You told me something that I thought was pretty interesting, at least if I remember correctly. That Big Ears was something you work for the Big Ears Music Festival now, and I believe that you told me that you sort of in some ways grew up being inspired by Big Ears when you were younger.
Yeah, absolutely. When I don't think I was even old enough to drive, but I was 15, maybe about to turn 16, and I started doing work for the AC Entertainment Street Team, putting up posters. So I would run around town and put up concert posters and work at shows and pass out handbills and all of this stuff. So I've been kind of in the Ashley Caps universe for a long time, and um, that was really huge because I had access to all of these concerts that otherwise I wouldn't have access to, and not to mention Bonnaroo. So I was really, really lucky that at a young age I had access to a lot of live music, and thanks to Ashley Caps, a lot of really quality, amazing live music. And that had a huge impact on me because, you know, in that transition of between high school and college, like I was so inspired by everything that I was seeing and all the creativity that I knew that I wanted to continue in music in some way, in one way or another. So, um, and then 2009 was the very first big years, and I think I checked wristbands or something at the door at one of the venues that's no longer even a venue. So, yeah, I was at the very first big years, and it's been really cool to see it evolve and expand over the years. And it actually didn't happen for a few years. So it was really exciting that it made a return and has continued to just grow and thrive over the years.
Cecilia Stair is with us and talking about um, her music as well as the Big Ears Festival, which kicks off today in Knoxville. 4-day festival of, and how it, you've probably been asked this a million times. I know I have, but like, can you summarize the Big Ears Festival for someone who maybe has no idea what it is?
Yeah, so this is really simple, but the way that I describe this festival is it's a festival for people who love to listen to music. So you go into a venue and people are listening, they're attentive, they are there for the music. And that sounds so simple, but I would say most festivals you go to, there's more of a social element. People are there in groups and they're socializing, and there's definitely a place for that too that's important. But Big Ears is really a festival that's about the music. And so it's not defined by a certain genre or anything like that, but it really is defined by this is music that we are coming to listen to. So it's interesting, you'll see people standing on their own. You see people coming to the festival just on their own, just because they want to go and they want to listen
I feel,
and
I feel, I feel like I noticed that there are, the times that I've been, I feel like I've noticed that there were these couples that I got the sense were actually like, this is not meant to sound geriatric, but there were couples that were there who were retired, who finally were getting to sort of go do things they like to do, and sort of treating it as this, oh, I don't know, trip or vacation or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who come in from other places. So, as a Knoxville musician, we're so proud that people are coming in from Nashville and from New York and internationally too to our community. And of course, they're experiencing all of these amazing international artists, but they're also experiencing Knoxville. And I think that's something that we're really proud of.
Absolutely. Cecilia Stair is here. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL. Now, your music has, we've got like a really interesting segment here because we're going to, Lisa Bielawa is going to be here in a minute. You all work together as musicians and in some other ways too, that the community figures into, and I'm just really interested to figure out how we talk about this or how we share about what's being done. So with that in mind, I'm curious if you could talk maybe a little bit about how was it for you to coming back to Knoxville to sort of like reintegrate into a music scene, or find that the one that you knew was had moved on and there was a new one, or did you have any trouble sort of like fitting back into the music scene in Knoxville?
Honey, I was so scared of that. I was so scared about kind of being accepted again back into a community that I had sort of not parted ways with, but drifted apart from a little bit. And I was so happy and so grateful that I felt just so immediately welcomed back. Um, and I also was very grateful that I was coming back with a new skill set and a new degree in music therapy. And so I was also coming back with this new education that let me pursue music therapy work. So it was a little daunting at first, but it was really exciting. And I'm really happy that I've reconnected with some musicians that I used to play with. And then also I'm really happy that I've um, managed to kind of piece together contract work as a music therapist, which is not something I was able to do when I used to live here. So that was a really exciting experience.
Now, you as a cellist, I feel like you have this interesting ability to plug into a variety of groups or performers or whatever. You've performed with like you can show up on someone's stage and someone who knows you in the audience might be like, "Oh, hey, there's Cecilia. she's playing with Tyler Childers or something like that." Now, so at Big Ears this year, you're performing, I believe, with William Tyler and also with R.B. Morris. Is that right?
Yeah, R.B. Morris, I've known for a long time. He is a poet, he's a singer-songwriter, so I play in his band. We played last year. But for this performance, he's reading from his Mockingbird book of poetry. And William Wright has composed music that goes along with those poems. And it's a combination of aleatoric or improvised pieces and some pieces that are composed and more arranged. So it's kind of a variety of things. It's a very interesting group of musicians, interesting instrumentation. We have vocalists, we have flute, we have clarinet, and I'll go on and on, but it's a unique project, and it's something that's a little different from I think what any of us have ever really done before. So yeah, we're excited about that tonight. And then William Tyler, I'm going to meet for the first time in about an hour. Um, so we'll see. Yeah, but that's kind of the spirit of Big Ears. You jump in, and sometimes it's the things that are less planned that become the most sort of magical and exciting. So I'm trying to embrace that spirit and let go of my type A personality and roll with it.
I had a friend who said that these are that Big Ears is this is those people's Olympics, or this is those people's Academy Awards or something like that. The performers that come together at the Big Ears Festival often like commingle in ways like you just described, and maybe they've never been on stage together before,
Yeah.
but you've got such a high level of musicianship that you get these, you may see something that may never be seen again. In fact, you're probably likely to.
Yeah, and I think this is a festival that musicians get really, really excited to be a part of because there's just such an interesting mix of musicians that are all in the same space, walking around, going from venue to venue. So there's just this really interesting alchemy, and yeah, there are really cool things that can come up with that. And you put a bunch of improvisers in the same town, like obviously fun, exciting things are going to happen.
Cecilia Stair is here. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL. Hey, let's take a break and welcome Lisa Bielawa into. I'm gonna have to work on that pronunciation every time. In with us in just a second. So I'm gonna play something from Lisa and come back and have her join us and continue talking about this.
All right.
This is Trivial Thursdays, and we will be back with Cecilia Stair and Lisa Bielawa right after this. As a matter of fact, here is something from, let's see what we've got here. I'm going to play something from her Kafka Songs record. This is called This Time, and we will be back with more Trivial Thursday, so stick around, please.
This portion of WRFL's programming is made possible in part by Greasy Art Supply. Greasy offers art supplies such as paints, pencils, sketchbooks, and more. Greasy is located at 138 DeWeese Street in Lexington. More information can be found at Greasy Art Supply on Instagram. WRFL thanks Greasy Art Supply for supporting college radio.
This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL. I am your host, Mick Jeffries. Happy to be with you here. We heard music just then from Lisa Bielawa, and Cecilia Stair is also here. So I am happy to welcome Lisa to the show. Thank you for being on Trivial Thursdays with us, Lisa. Hello.
Hello. How are you, Nick?
I'm pretty good. I have to do something kind of awkward now, which is read a little bit of your bio, okay? I'm going to keep it short.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I learned from Tessa Lark that this is not something you all really enjoy, but I feel like our listeners should know.
No, she's right.
That you're a composer, producer, a vocalist. You're a Guggenheim Fellow, a Rome Prize winner in musical composition. You take your inspiration from work from literary sources and close artistic collaborations. And you've received awards and fellowships from, I won't even go into it. There's just lots of them. We've run out of time. What's interesting, and I'm going to continue here, is you consistently incorporate community making as a part of your artistic vision. And you've created music for public spaces in Lower Manhattan, the bridge over the Ohio River in Louisville, the banks of the Tiber River in Rome, and on the sites of former airfields in Berlin and San Francisco. Marking the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then during the pandemic, you cultivated a virtual community using submitted testimonies and recorded voices from 6 continents through your work Broadcast from Home, which is now archived with the Library of Congress. And that's just the short version. So again, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mick.
Happy to have you here. And I just for half a second there, when I saw your face, I was like, don't have imposter syndrome. You deserve all those things that you want, okay?
Oh, my goodness. All right.
So let's see. I wanted to ask you, so we just listened to a piece, and I thought you might like to talk about that because in particular, one of the things about your work is that it's inspired by literary sources, and I think that this last bit was no exception to that, involving Franz Kafka, I suppose. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I need to say that for those of you who listen to that, that is being performed by one person at the same time. I know it's a piece for voice and violin, but that's the unbelievable Carla Kilstead. Wow. Who is on this year's Big Ears Festival, with some of her own work, actually, is being performed. And so she is a tremendous colleague, and she's one of the many people. I mean, hearing Cecilia talk about how you put all these people in Knoxville in one place, this is so exciting for me because it's like a huge reunion. I mean, so many of my collaborators are in town. It's crazy. I mean, from, and Tessa Lark, which I'll talk about her in a second, because I'm actually writing her a concerto right now. Like when I get off this interview, I'm going to go back to work.
Got to get that concerto done. Got to get it done this morning.
Deadline's coming, man. Tessa, and then Joshua Roman, also, Clarice Jensen has performed in one of my really big projects, which was a made-for-TV sort of episodic opera, and she was in an episode that was shot on Alcatraz Island. I mean, this is just there's so many collaborators in town. Steve Schick was involved in Chrissy Broadcast, which is the large-scale piece that we did out in San Francisco on the Chrissy airfield that you mentioned.
Yes.
So he was part of that, and so it's just an incredible feeling. And now, of course, I'm working with Cecilia, who's like, she and I are new music buddies, right? We just basically met, but I'm sort of crashing into these new colleagues who are making work in a similar spirit as mine. So it's a very exciting time, and it's sort of too much to do. Sadly, because I'm here with the Philip Glass Ensemble, which is not sad. But what's sad is that after this, I also have to stop talking for a day because I'm singing performances with the Glass Ensemble on Friday and Saturday shows, and I've got to stop using the voice so that I can get up there and sing that rigorous music. So it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on this weekend for all of us, for this big musical family, and Big Ears makes that possible, which is incredible. But I'm really happy to talk to you because, of course, I have this very special relationship, as you mentioned, with Kentucky.
Right.
Because I spent a year as one of the three members of the Louisville Orchestra's Creators Corps program. So I was living in Louisville, and over the course of the couple of years that I have kind of become a second, that Kentucky became my second home. I also came down to Knoxville to do a residency at Log Haven, the artist residency here in Knoxville. So I spent an entire month in Knoxville a year ago. So I have these relationships with these two cities that are really, that are really deep. And one of the things that has led me to is a pretty immersive relationship with Appalachian and traditional music. I wrote a piece that was a collaboration with a singer-songwriter in Hazard, Kentucky, that with the Louisville Orchestra and traditional musicians that we did all over the state. And then when I was here last year for a month, I went all over Eastern Tennessee to hear traditional music. And so many of the people that I heard I see on, are actually on the festival this weekend. So I'm going to get a chance to check them out again. So all of that has led me to a place where my desire to deepen my collaboration with sort of musicians and music making in this part of the world has led to meeting Cecilia and starting work on this big project that we're going to talk a little bit about. Sure. So anyway, that's the long story, the sort of medium length story of how it is that I've come to you and to this discussion today,
And then I was delighted to learn that you're the composer in residence for the Louisville Philharmonic, correct?
Well, the Louisville Orchestra has this program, the Creators Corps, which I was mentioning. I was one of the inaugural sort of creators in residence there. They actually have new people there now. So now I'm here among all of you. But yeah, it was an incredible relationship, and it is ongoing, meaning that I'm currently writing this violin concerto for Tessa Lark that incorporates, some of her traditional music making with her virtuoso sort of classical playing in one piece that will be premiered by the Louisville Orchestra in October. So my relationship with them continues, but my residency is technically over now.
Okay. Well, you really opened the door here, because for a continuation of the conversation I was having last week with Tessa over the sort of I mean, for one thing, I know we keep mentioning Big Ears, but like it's always this kind of, it's this mashup sometimes of a variety of genres. I don't know. We talked about labels and how problematic they can be, but you both have this experience of, or I'll just speak about you then, of being trained in the classical idiom. I don't know if that's the right word or not. But then, which at a certain time was so far removed. I say that, and then I have to think of Aaron Copland, from folk traditions. And then, of course, just to circle back to Aaron Copland, he's someone who took folk melodies. Appalachian Spring is probably one of the more famous ones. But what I'm trying to get around to is I'm so curious about how it works for you to sort of interface Appalachian folk music with the sort of rigors of classical music.
Well, the rigors of both.
Oral tradition. Yeah, okay.
The rigors of both. I mean, like learning how, with Tessa's help, to navigate just the fiddle virtuosity of that is really, it's incredible to me. Just the technical challenge is delicious, because I love a technical challenge. But I would say one of the things I would sort of criticize my field for somewhat is this sort of focus on style as the thing that we're playing in, that we're mashing up, right? It's really about people. And for me, it comes from not necessarily a desire to mash styles together, but a desire to create community when I'm making new work. And so wherever I land, you grow where you're planted, right? But I've sort of made a point in my career of going a lot of places where growing and being planted might be particularly interesting. because I grew up in a household where my father was a composer, an academic within an academic institution and environment, and my mother is an early music performance practice scholar. So these are some very highly sort of brainy fields, and I kind of grew up in a little bit of a a musical cocoon where my skill set was able to develop really, really rapidly and in a lot of different ways. I played violin for 13 years. I was a little Suzuki kid, but my own work started ranging into what some people may feel is primarily other styles, but for me, it had to do with getting access to the world, and expanding my connection to human beings who were also making music. I will learn how to write for any instrument. I mean, it's a challenge, but Cecilia and I went and visited a baritone ukulele, group yesterday. And when I was in Germany, I learned how to write for alpenhorns and, and tried to get my head in San Francisco around the Chinese instruments. And this is super exciting to me. So that's sort of a circuitous way of saying that Big Ears is really a pretty good home for me right now, to be able to. It is like Christmas, walking around and hearing all of these things and seeing people making music in all these different ways.
I do get a sense of that for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think, why don't we bring, shall we bring Cecilia in here to
Yeah,
talk about,
let's do that.
broadcast. And before we do, hi Cecilia, welcome back.
Hi.
What you did in Louisville, I want, before we forget, because you did a sort of a mass performance on the bridge.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that bridge is called. It's
the Big Four
It's
Bridge.
this bridge that is only foot traffic. The Big
Yeah.
Four Bridge, yeah. And so, how do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because
Sure.
I'm sorry I missed it.
Oh, it was, yeah. Well, and people can
And
actually
that's all I have.
Google it, and
I only have an A.
there's like a yeah, exactly. So it's the broadcast series of pieces that I make actually started with that one you mentioned on the Tempelhof Airfield in Berlin. That was Tempelhof broadcast. Then there was Chrissy broadcast, which was on Chrissy Field in San Francisco. This was called Louisville broadcast. And the project that Cecilia and I are starting work on now is going to be Knoxville broadcast, which makes Knoxville the fourth city to bring this piece. It's not the same piece everywhere, obviously, because it's for different forces. What it is it's a composition for hundreds of people in public space that basically has no barriers to participation in it. So groups of musicians that are based in middle schools or civic orchestras or traditional music groups, or a variety of kinds of ensembles. Doesn't matter what the instrumentation is, doesn't matter how old you are. I think the age range in the Louisville Broadcast Project was 4 to 81 or something. Cecilia sees that as a challenge. We're gonna break that age range barrier. Yeah, I want to expand that. So the idea is that I will incorporate anybody into this performance. And broadcast, the reason they're called broadcasts actually has to do with the pre-technological definition of broadcast, which means to cast in all directions. Because physically, architecturally, the performance starts with however many hundred. I had 450 in Louisville. I had 800 in San Francisco. Starts at the center, and then what happens is some people play, and then some people who are not playing move away from the center. So there's always music happening, but the piece is actually expanding, sort of like the Big Bang, like a big constellation, filling this public space and creating these interstitial sort of listening routes, so listeners can just walk through the piece and decide how to hear it. And that's sort of the premise of the piece. It's 45 minutes long, and I always have a right hand who's a sort of a producing director with me, and that is what Cecilia is here in Knoxville. And I can't think of a better partner for this because of all of her work, not just as an improvising musician and as somebody who understands aleatoric and sort of these style melding kinds of musical music making. But she's also a music therapist. And so a lot of our talks around building this community through the project this way tap directly into her multifaceted work, you know, as a performing musician, but also as a music therapist. The sort of the values, our values are very, very closely aligned.
That's Lisa Bielawa. Every time I open my mouth, it comes out different. I'm trying.
They're all good.
Okay, good. Cecilia, can I ask you, do you remember how you first came across this piece of music by Lisa, or what your initial reactions were when you sort of became aware of it?
Yeah, well, I very recently got hired to do community outreach work for the Big Ears Festival. And one of the very first things that Ashley Capps talked to me about was Lisa's project and talked to me about this piece. And I just immediately was drawn to it because the spirit of it is bringing people together, making connections that didn't exist previously. So I love the concept of it. I love the spirit of it. And Lisa's vision for this is so clear, and she's done it before successfully, which is incredible. Like the thought of bringing together 800 musicians in an organized way. I mean, that has never happened before. I feel like I can say that pretty definitely. That has not happened before. So the thought of doing that here in our community is just huge. So I'm really excited about it. I think we've generated some good kind of initial interest in the project, and people have been really excited and really willing to learn about the project. And so it's kind of this very exciting beginning stage of kind of imagining all of the possibilities. And I think we've got some really good support and really good interest. And you know, on a personal level, I agree with Lisa, and I appreciate that she expressed that. I think our values are very aligned. You know, kind of at the heart of what I want to do in this job as a music therapist is increase access to the arts and eliminate barriers to participation, because I really believe at my core that every person deserves opportunities to be creative, to be expressive, to connect through the arts. So this project is exactly that, and it's bringing people together through music. And you know, the possibilities are endless for what happens after that. You know, you get together and you create something, and good things always come from that because you're connecting through something magical and fun, you know.
That is Cecilia Stair here on Trivial Thursdays. And Lisa Bielawa is here with us also. And, you know, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking was how these borders keep getting kind of like dissolved in some ways. And I think about, you know, my experience of classical music as being something that you go to an auditorium and you watch it from your seat, and you are not getting on stage.
Right.
Lisa, you described the broadcast piece. I especially heard the Louisville part as being this thing that the audience actually kind of like circulates through.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I wonder how important it is for you to sort of dissolve these borders between, you know, audience and performer, that kind of thing.
Well, it's basically the binarism that comes to mind, of course, is passive and active. You know, I have a collaborator who, you know, she and I were sort of frustrated during the pandemic of just this sort of preponderance of like people making art at each other. You know, like my hunger to try to find a way to, and you know, I understand that. I mean, that's where we all were at, but that's why I made this broadcast from home project where people could sort of participate from anywhere. It was along the same lines. It was very different how it was structured because, of course, everybody was stuck at home, and it was put together using you know, digital audio. But it was called a broadcast because the broadcast series of works that I've made are really designed, as you just said, to kind of create a whole spectrum of potential active participation, right? One of the things that we all want for children is to give them an opportunity to do music, and they don't necessarily need to grow up to be musicians, but we want them to do music. But then later in life, in some parts of our field, in the classical music field, sometimes I feel that as soon as people reach a certain age, then if they're not professionals, then their relationship to music making becomes audience donor, you know, and the idea that people can continue to make sound and participate or actively influence what they're experiencing musically, right? Walking through a performance space and deciding what you want to hear, that makes you a walking mixing engineer of your own experience, right? This is an active, you know, and people can participate in the project if they love to sing, but they're totally tone deaf. Bring it on, you know. I'll write for a yelling chorus, you know. It doesn't matter to me really what the instruments are. If you're a symphonic composer, you can write a part for ratchet, you know. It doesn't matter what the instruments are to me. What matters to me is that everybody can come into the performance experience with the level of active engagement that is most meaningful to them, and it's going to be transformative for them. And that's the music therapy connection, I think, that Cecilia and I share, is that that's our desire, you know.
Cecilia, what do you have to say about that?
I think it all sounds amazing. I love it. We've had such a good time just running around town and just,
yeah.
And like just to get to meet someone who has got this incredible background in music, but also is so open to all of the possibilities and so creative and like with such a focus on inclusion is so invigorating. And it's just been a really fun week of working with Lisa, and also I've been working a lot with Laura Downs, who's a pianist, and doing a lot of community visits. So yeah, it's been very exciting.
Should we have a couple more excerpts to play. Do we want to play something to talk about? You may be like, well, what do you have? And
right.
You know, I do have an excerpt from Home, actually. That's probably the thing to do, right?
Right. I mean, I can, you know, I know we're sort of, you know, heading into our last time together here, but Home is a really great collaboration that came out of my work with the Louisville Orchestra. And Lindsay Branson, who's a Hazard, Kentucky-based singer-songwriter, and I created this little piece that could be performed by symphonic musicians, but also an unlimited number of traditional musicians. And Lindsay fronts it on singing with guitar. And we also had local sopranos. You know, there was a Walmart manager, you know, who was also, had a great voice. So I wrote a sort of a solo there, because it's not just traditional music that is performed in Appalachia. You know, there's all kinds of music making all over. This is the sort of thing that was important to sort of shine a light on, right? So this is a little excerpt, you know, from that. And Tessa Lark was also, whoever was on the tours with us, she was performing some concerto. So I wrote a part for her. You know, Chris Steele was, you know, I think Chris Steele is also on this little clip that you're going to play. He was doing something of his own on this tour, so I put him in there too. Anybody who was on the tours around Kentucky, Teddy Abrams, the conductor, and I would just, you know, I'd find a way to put him in there. And we had a great time, so.
That sounds great. Let's listen to an excerpt of Lisa Bielawa's broadcast from Home. Or is this just Home?
This is just Home. This is just Home. Yeah. And Lindsay Branson, with whom I wrote it. This is co-written with Lindsay.
Yes, and Lindsay Branson. So stick around. This is Trivial Thursdays. We will be right back. And here is some music from Lisa Bielawa. And I'm sorry, say the name again.
Lindsay Branson.
Thank you. Things go in one of my ears and out the other. We'll be back, so stick around.
It's the place that I call mine. The sun will always shine. I'm a going home. I'm going home. I'm going home. It's the place that I call mine. The sun will always shine. Let's go home, let's go home. I'm not going home. Let's go home, let's go home. I'm not going home. Let's go home, let's go home. I'm not going home. Let's go home, let's go home. I'm not going home. Let's go home, let's go home. I'm not going home.
This is University of Kentucky President Eli Capilouto, and you're listening to WRFL Lexington at 88.1 FM.
This portion of WRFL's programming is made possible in part by Geomancer Permaculture. Geomancer projects promote food sovereignty in the face of climate change and community control over housing and development. More information can be found at Geomancer Permaculture on Instagram, Patreon, and YouTube. WRFL thanks Geomancer for supporting college radio.
This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL. Happy to be with you. I'm your host, Mick Jeffries. And coming up a little later in the show, we're going to visit with Jennifer Jackson of the Kentucky League of Women Voters. And currently, I'm delighted to be spending some time with Cecilia Stair and Lisa Bielawa. And we heard an excerpt from Home just then, which was just breathtaking.
Oh,
I
thanks,
think
Mick.
Cecilia and I were even commenting, I think, just on the side to each other. Yeah, that was really something. And did this involve it's hard not to stick on the Walmart soprano thing. You
Right,
mentioned
right.
that.
Actually, this was a local soprano in where we were in Murray. She was a mom and a voice teacher at this community college. This soprano, but everywhere we went, we worked with sort of regional, somebody local, and she's just tremendous.
So did you find, like, I'm curious if you I was just imagining a scenario where you run into some people and you're like, well, my sister can sing, you should talk to her.
Yeah.
And how did you find that working with non-professional musicians and contributors, did you have to think in new ways to sort of to work in the sort of framework of quote unquote classical music for that?
Well, I mean, the answer is yes, except that I've been doing that for decades. So like I'm always looking for chances to do that. Something I was realizing as we were listening this time is that Lindsay Branson, with whom I wrote it, when I went first to Hazard to sort of, some of the Louisville Orchestra staff and I went out there to sort of figure out how I might be able to enter into this, like, how could I told the Louisville Orchestra, I said, okay, I'm going to write a piece that can have traditional musicians and the Louisville Orchestra on stage that requires no rehearsal. And they're like, okay, well, whatever. So they say, no, it's totally insane. So I went out there, and it turns out that Lindsay was actually the director of education for the arts, the sort of arts center there in Hazard. And she was tasked with sort of taking me around to like meet other musicians. But then I asked, well, can we have an open mic or something so I can hear some local? And she sang, and I thought, wait a minute, she's the one I want to work with, And so it's just sort of makes me laugh because I just met Cecilia, but this is what happens to me. I just sort of meet people, especially, when I come into communities where there are younger women who are like making their way in the field. And like, I love that aspect of the field, this sort of intergenerational collaboration, a chance to kind of catch people on their own paths while they're going somewhere, and finding a way to, again, it's people. It's not so much style. It's not so much like, how am I going to work with this person who is, who's a singer-songwriter and works in a different way, or just learn it. It's just, you just learn it. You learn the language, you find a way you meet halfway, you use the tools that you need to use to create that relationship. And Cecilia understands that completely. So it makes it very easy when we, if that's what you dedicate your life to doing, and and it's not sort of an exceptional one-off, then it's a skill set of its own.
That's Lisa Bielawa, the composer, singer, instrumentalist, lots of hats in this.
Lots of hats, yeah, especially this weekend.
Cecilia,
Yeah.
did you want to share anything about what Lisa was saying?
I could just listen to Lisa talk all day. I'm learning so much from her, I'm just trying to absorb it all. And I do so much work on my own, it's been really fun to just work so closely with someone who kind of has a similar attitude and similar values. And it's just been really fun to like put our heads together. And that's fun for me because I do so much work just on my own with my music therapy practice. So I don't have anything much to add, but do you have any questions?
It can be isolating. I mean, I think it is great to meet somebody who actually has, I mean, we developed a shorthand very quickly. I mean, we really understand each other. And so I think, and it's not the kind of thing that, you're right, Mick, it's not necessarily the kind of thing that a lot of classical musicians just understand. Is this sort of, these kinds of values actually dictating the work itself, how it's scored, who's on stage, how it's experienced. I mean, I'm willing to let all of that be turned on its head in order to serve the values that Cecilia and I have been talking about,
that seems so, no authority here exactly, but that seems so antithetical to what I think of as classical music. Do you?
You
So
know,
like,
I
go
grew
ahead.
up in the classical music world. Like I'm my mom is in the symphony, and you know, one of the things that I'm really excited about, or that we kind of share in common, is that we come from those classical music backgrounds, and we appreciate that and we embrace that, but also like kind of willing to get outside of the normal environment, willing to connect with musicians who don't have that formal training, and not seeing it as like we're above people because we have this classical training, but that we're all just musicians and we're all just people. Um, and that's something I appreciate too. And I have to give credit to my mom too, because you know she has that classical training. She's in the symphony. She's performing at big ears, but she always loved Appalachian music. She always loved folk music. She played with my dad, who is a guitarist. So I'm very lucky that I grew up in a household where music was music, and classical music was not more legitimate than anything else. And my mom is someone who modeled that for me. Um,
Mm.
so, you know, I think I have to give her some credit for teaching me that at a young age, you know. She was in the living room like practicing Beethoven, and my dad was on the front porch playing old time music. And
I love it.
it was all important. It was all equal, you know?
That
That's
sounds
great.
that sounds wonderful. I do. I want to ask about. We've talked about Lisa. You've talked about composing music that doesn't need to be rehearsed. Um,
Right.
and and so and at the same time, I think your compositions are they have a lot of detail. They're very meticulously
Hmm.
crafted, emotionally dynamic. And so how do you make sure that some of the spontaneity stays in there in the midst
Mm.
of a structure that you've created?
Well, it's interesting. Cecilia and I were in a meeting yesterday an organization that has very, very young musicians, like four, like really, really little ones. And we were talking about how the preparation, I need to learn how people learn stuff, right? So even though Knoxville Broadcast which is by the way it's going to be performed sometime in late September, early October, like in the fall. So that's the sort of timeline we're looking at here. And working back from there, each group is going to be able to have its own rehearsals on the material that they play in the piece. But there can't be a rehearsal of a piece for hundreds of people in a public space. The rehearsal is the first performance. So, you just have to find a way to design the materials that each of the groups is going to perform such that it is the easiest possible, smoothest, most joyful experience for them. And sometimes with little kids, you don't want to have too much preparation time. You shouldn't really be giving them anything that they can't learn in 3 weeks or so, because the arc, they don't, they're little, and their arc of expectation and anticipation has to be met, for example. Whereas there's some other, I mean, there's so many ways that you need to learn the process that musicians use, not just the notation system, not just is it going to be rote learning? Are they going to use changes? Am I going to be giving them a narrative score, which I've done before too, like do this, do that? That's only part of the process. Another part of the process is, how do they learn? And what's the timeline going to be, and what is that? So I think I say, it can be put together with no rehearsal, but I guess what I mean by that is no tutti rehearsal,
Sure.
no everyone rehearsal. It has to have like Legos. It has to be able to be performed by people who are each their own ready to go Lego block, and then it has to be organized so that it locks in. And that's that's going to be part of Cecilia's job. She's got to help me organize it so that it all locks in, so that the people come and yeah.
And I assume it's different. I assume you learn new things every time, kind of,
Yeah,
and that the
yeah,
idioms are different depending on where you're doing
totally
this.
different. Yeah, I mean, I was saying yesterday, I feel like every time I do this project, it's a sort of a year-long draft. I'm going to spend my entire life working on this project, and every time I do a large-scale broadcast like this, and there are a couple of other cities coming up in the next couple of years too that I can't announce yet, but it's something that's gaining some new momentum now. I think just in the climate we're all in, where people are really feeling like their opportunities to come together and have joyful, experiences with lots of people from different places. We really need that right now because of a lot of the things that are going on in the world, So yeah, every time I do it, it's different. And I feel like I get it. I get more things worked out each time. It gets better and better.
That is, I love hearing about this. I can't wait to
Thanks.
experience it. I'm sorry I missed the Louisville performance. That's going to eat at me for probably a long time. But I want to thank you all both for being on the show. Is there anything that we're missing because you guys have a busy day, I'm pretty sure, with this festival starting today?
Especially Cecilia. I have to sit here and just not talk to anybody for the rest of the day, but I'm going to go to Cecilia's show. So
Right. Anything you want to add, Cecilia? Cecilia Stair with us from Knoxville.
No,
Lex Patriot, I like to say.
Lex Patriot. Yeah, I saw that. That's funny. Lexington will always be one of my homes, and I love Lexington so much. And I love that everything that I learned and all the friendships I made there have given me just tools and support that are helping me to help Lisa with her vision. And, I'm just in this space right now of everything feels so connected in like a magical way. And I want to just live in that and embrace that. And I really appreciate Lisa for giving me some trust to collaborate on this amazing piece. And I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Fabulous. Lisa, anything you want to, any parting words for us?
just thank you, Big Ears. You brought together my whole extended musical family for a long weekend and introduced me to some new members of that family. So it's going to be great.
Well, both of you have the very best time, and this has been an absolute joy. We cleared quite a few hurdles to make this happen, so I want to thank you on the air for doing that with me. And I tell you what, let's leave. We'll send you all off and play one more excerpt from Kafka songs. Which, did you want to say anything about? This is Couriers, is what we're going to play from.
Couriers, yeah. Well, this
this
is the amazing Carla Kilstead, also on this year's Big Ears Festival, and she's singing and playing at the same time. So.
Oh man, okay. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Let's see here.